Today's Mass is in honor of St. Lawrence Justinian, who was a 15th century bishop, a very holy man, a man of great sanctity, a man who was called the glory of prelates, or the glory of bishops in his day. I would hope that all of us here at the school would strive to be the glory of the students, would strive to have that name attached to us, that we truly do try to excel in holiness, excel in our studies, excel in all that pleases God. That really is what life is about. We're not here for very long, even though you're young. When I was young, I thought I had forever to live. But we know that that's not true, that life comes very quickly. And it seems like just yesterday I was in grade school. And now I'm 42, and it seems to go faster with every year, and that'll happen to you too. Right now things seem to be going by very, very slowly. But in eternity, that doesn't happen. In eternity, everything just is. It's right there. There is no past, present, and future, and that's hard for us to wrap our minds around. Well, St. Lawrence Justinian had the gift of tears, so usually when he talked about holy things, he would start crying. This is not because he was sad. It was because of the beauty that was in his soul, the beauty that was being manifest in the words that affected him. He was not a trained writer, but he was very well written. He didn't have much schooling, and yet he did magnificent things because God helped him to be better at whatever he did. Now, for us in school, you can't just not try and then expect to be good. God expects you to put the effort in. He expects you to not only train yourself in writing, but then he wants to lift you to even greater heights, and that's really what he did with St. Lawrence Justinian. St. Lawrence Justinian also was very much a prophetic man. He told a lot of things about the future that came to pass. And that's how you know when someone is authentic, when a saint says this is going to happen, and it happens. We have many examples of this throughout our history, and it should give us great pride that we share in that faith that those saints of old shared. We must see in this Mass, as now I want to shift to thinking about the Mass, a great revelation into eternity. Now, people, especially when we're younger, sometimes we may think Mass is boring, we may think it's too long, we may think we don't really understand what's going on. But all you have to remember is that once you come into the church and the Mass begins, a window opens, a window to eternity. And in that eternal glimpse, or that eternity that we can see, we see Christ being offered on the altar of sacrifice for us. So how could that be boring? How could that be too long? If anything, people who say that don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the Mass. They've never really tried to participate well in the Mass through the active participation of the heart. Nobody really talks about that. Mass is not a participation of everyone getting up and doing something necessarily. It is a participation of the heart, the mind, and the soul primarily, because those are higher than the body. The body hopefully mimics the soul and the mind. We must see in the Mass all of the angels. Now, why would a bunch of angels be present at something that wasn't that interesting? They wouldn't. They have better things to do, like praise God all the time. But they are here. You can't see them. Some of you littler kids might be able to see them physically because you're closer to Him. But we know they're here. We know that there are so many here in the sanctuary that they can barely move. So they're waiting. They're waiting for the Eucharistic sacrifice. They're waiting to honor the Father with His greatest gift, and that is the sacrifice of Jesus. On the altar, you'll notice some different things from some parishes, and we're very thankful to Father McHugh that he has let the altar, the high altar, be transformed in some ways. Now, the tabernacle was always there, which is very nice. It's in the center where it should be, because we need a central focal point of the Mass. The focal point should not be the priest. The focal point should not be necessarily the altar. The focal point should be the tabernacle at all times. Then during the Mass, the focal point becomes the altar. So it's good that it's in the middle. Then we have 6 high candles. Those are lit during high Masses. Now normally we would only have 2 candles lit for low Mass. We're singing a few parts of the low Mass, or we're making it a little bit more special, and thus the rubrics dictate that there may be 2 or 4 candles at a low Mass. We're doing 4 to give us a heightened sense of the beauty of this Mass and the fact that you are able to come to such a beautiful manifestation of God's love for you. We also have 4 relics on the altar. You may not be able to see them. They're in back of the lighted candles and in front of the unlighted candles. And those 4 relics are relics of different saints that are special to me, special to members of the congregation. And then on the altar itself, there are 3 altar cloths to symbolize the death of Christ. And in one of those, on top of one of those altar cloths, is a Greek corporal. And sewn into that Greek corporal are the relics of the Roman martyrs. They're not named because usually when they give you the relics from Rome, and they just call them Roman martyrs, they've kind of been mixed up. And so we can't really identify particular bones sometimes from the ancient martyrs. And so we just know that we are saying Mass on the relics of the martyrs in the presence of the relics of other saints. A very beautiful, beautiful thing for us to think about, that we are linked to all points of history in our Mass. Some people might point to the Latin and say, well, that's a hard language. Nobody really understands Latin. Why would we have Mass in Latin? Well, Latin binds us, and some of you have already heard me say this, but I want to say it again for the benefit of those with CTSA and those who may not have heard me. Latin reverses the Tower of Babel. It gives us something in common again. I was in a parish in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where there were 5 different language Masses. The English speakers wouldn't go to the Spanish Mass, the Spanish speakers wouldn't go to the Portuguese Mass, the Portuguese speakers wouldn't go to the Korean Mass, and so on. It was very unfortunate. When we have Latin, we have something that's in common with all of us. We are, in fact, the Latin Rite Church. This is a static language, and it doesn't change.